Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings and welcome to our virtual Enlightenment Salon of February 20th, 2022. By the way, 2/20/2022 is a palindrome date, so it is a bit of a special day, and on this special day we're going to have a special conversation about transhumanist films. So I'd like to welcome our distinguished panel. We have our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia. We have our Director of Marketing and 2020 U.S. presidential candidate, Charlie Kam. We have our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer. We have our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg. And we have our Director of Publication, Zach Richardson. So quite a distinguished group today. We look forward to all of their insights. Our special guest today is Daniel Sollinger. Daniel started filmmaking in high school by attending the Fine Arts Center in Greenville, South Carolina. While getting his BFA at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, Daniel won the award for Best Cinematographer and had his photography published in the New York Times. He is a hands-on producer who believes in understanding every aspect of the filmmaking process. Over the last 25 years, he has written, directed, acted, edited, and performed most technical positions on a film set. As a result, he understands the specific issues that may arise during any part of the filmmaking process and makes well-informed decisions based on years of experience. And today we will be discussing two films with Daniel. One is a film that is now quite familiar to individuals in our transhumanist and life extensionist communities, which is Immortality or Bust. It was a documentary that was released in 2019, and it took us on a journey along with Zoltan Istvan, the founder of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, on his Immortality Bust tour during his U.S. presidential campaign. So now we shall watch a brief trailer for Immortality or Bust.
When he was 21, he sailed across the planet in a boat. He took 500 books with him. He's credited with inventing volcano surfing. Zoltan Istvan, he's running for president in 2016.
A typical transhumanist is somebody who has an interest in using science and technology to radically enhance themselves.
You know, it's like a port.
More body modification than anything.
So when I present my tag to the car, it unlocks the door. Another reader to start my car.
This goes right onto my skull.
Biohacking definitely is a hidden world.
This has been part of the problem with transhumanism is how do we spread transhumanism without doing something very provocative, what you probably really can't.
The plan is to drive this sarcophagus on wheels to Washington, D.C.
You want to run for president? It's like, yeah. Don't you think it's brilliant?
I am trying to essentially use my political platform as an agenda to push for transhumanism.
I saw this as a kind of science fiction, really.
I didn't come to die. I came to stay.
I mean, Americans just hate science so much.
I'm not sure about this eternity thing.
America's gonna just grab a rifle and tell you to go back to wherever you came from.
A person who's a transhumanist wishes for extremely long life.
It does not help the spirit of evolution.
To enable human beings to bypass nature.
We don't really believe in that word natural.
You're a politician, you have to sell people hope.
The public is right, but the government is wrong.
You have to somehow tie this into the greatness of America.
I mean, we spent 20% of the federal budget basically on making bombs and defense and things like that, and just less than 2% on science and medical research.
Given today's level of technology, there's nothing more I can do for this person.
My father has had 4 heart attacks. He can't survive heart surgery anymore.
The younger we die, the better our species becomes.
Technology will make it so our lives are healthier, better, and safer. We can defeat aging.
So that was the trailer for Immortality or Bust. Please check out this film in full. You can find out various ways to watch it at immortalityorbust.com. Today, another focus of our conversation will be a film that is in the early stages of development called AgeLess. And there is a Discord server for AgeLess, which you are all invited to join by following the link that is now featured on the screen. And Daniel today is going to talk to us about AgeLess and the concept behind it and what it will take to produce this film. He will also take questions from the panel as well as from our audience regarding both Immortality or Bust and AgeLess. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them on whatever platform you are watching this salon on, because we will try to get to as many questions as possible during our session. And now, Daniel, welcome. Please provide your introductory remarks about AgeLess and anything you want to say about Immortality or Bust.
Thank you, Gennady. First, I want to say thank you for having me on. I have to say I'm really impressed by the effort and execution you've given to expanding the Transhumanist Party and growing it and strengthening it. It's been really amazing to watch. And yeah, it was a pleasure to sort of be there at the birth of the Transhumanist Party. When Zoltan created it, I also, think it was really smart and awesome of him to step back and let it go. Like George Washington at the founding of the, like it was going to be much stronger, by him stepping away from it than him trying to, control it or run it. And then you've just stepped in and done such a great job. So, kudos to you. I'm certainly open to any questions about Immortality or Bust. I saw somebody in the chat said it's better that the younger we die, and that was John McAfee who said that in the trailer. And he's always likes to be he passed, but like to be a very provocative person. And he was making an argument that dying early it makes the species stronger, and that was just sort of the argument that he was making at the time. I certainly don't agree. And I've been a filmmaker, my whole adult life, and I'm primarily a producer. I've made 65 movies. My latest movie was a movie called Clean that just came out, starring Adrian Brody. And but I've always been fascinated by transhumanism. Back in the early 90s, they called it extropianism. It goes all the way back into the 70s. But I probably started paying attention in the 90s. And when I saw that Zoltan was starting the Transhumanist Party, I just thought that was just a watershed moment, quite frankly. And, for technology, for science, and for the mass adoption of the understanding that technology is exponential, and that all the things that we have to deal with that we might seem like the far future are going to come, and we're going to have to deal with it a lot sooner than people think, in terms of radical life extension, giving legal rights to AI and cyborgs and all this stuff. I think it's coming a lot quicker than the general population understands. And that was a big reason why I wanted to make Immortality or Bust. As I said, I'm a producer, and I was really excited to produce this movie. And I went around and I must have asked like 30 or 40 other filmmakers to be the director, to direct it. And none of them wanted to. So I ended up directing it myself. And it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed making that movie. And I'm a big fan of all the wonderful things that technology is bringing, and I want to do more in this space. Like, one movie was not enough, And I was approached by a director named Galia Barkol, who her father passed away from Alzheimer's, and in the process of her trying to come to grips with that, she reached out to a lot of scientists and just trying to understand better what aging was, and if it's something that could be arrested or reversed. And, so she interviewed all these amazing scientists and decided that she wanted to do a movie about it. And my friend Eisen Robbins and Amy Shove, who are producers, brought me, she approached them, they brought me on. So now I'm producing this movie called AgeLess. And we're really going to delve into the science of what is possible, what is happening, what is possible. Immortality or Bust was a look at more the political side. There's definitely a political side to the movie that we will be embarking on. We've gotten the cooperation of a lot of the leading scientists and such. And but the thing I find about documentaries is that they take you in new and interesting directions that you never anticipated when you started to make it. So I'm excited to be a part of that journey. I wanted to do this a little bit differently. I want to take advantage of the technology that's out there. So we're going to be setting up a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. I believe I can register it in Wyoming for it to be a legal entity in and of itself. And we're going to have the people who are, we'll go build a community of people who will invest in the DAO, benefit in cryptocurrency from the film itself, and also through the community approach. I hope that they'll help us make the movie. Already on the Discord, somebody suggested that I reach out to a particular longevity scientist. I have, I think we're going to, what I'd like to do is to take all the raw footage and turn it into an NFT, so that, like with Immortality or Bust, we shot 100 hours worth of footage, but you only see 90 minutes. So, I want to make all the raw footage available to the community. So everything that the people have to say is available to them. And each one of those pieces of footage can, as an NFT, can be monetized and benefit the community in cryptocurrency as long as the blockchain exists, which I think is going to be for quite a long time to come. And I'm very excited about it. I'm excited about doing it in a new way. And yeah, that's my pitch for AgeLess. And I'm curious about other people's questions and about Immortality or Bust and about AgeLess.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. And the first question that I have for you is in regard to the filmmaking process. And you mentioned that when you create a documentary, you film a lot more footage than you actually end up using, because there are some constraints in terms of the length. Probably most people will not watch a 4-hour film, though we have had 4-hour virtual Enlightenment salons that have gotten a fair number of views. But with regard to Immortality or Bust, how did you decide what footage to retain and what footage to leave out? And what is in the footage that was left out that might perhaps be of interest to our viewers? And do you think you might repurpose it at some point in time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because when I started to make Immortality or Bust, I had no idea what the movie was going to be. I just knew that Zoltan was going to be perhaps the center of it or a big part of it. And I went to anti-aging conventions, and I have interviews with Liz Parrish before she got her treatment. I have interviews with Bill Anders. I got Natasha Vita-Moore, Max Moore. I did all these interviews with all these people that didn't fit into Zoltan's story, but were great interviews, very informative, very long interviews in much detail. And but ultimately, when I decided I didn't want to make a documentary with like talking heads, like I always wanted it to be moving, and I wanted the information to come out in a way that wasn't the sort of standard person sitting, with a potted plant behind them and a talking head, and so none of that footage made it into the movie. And I believe I started putting it up on YouTube. I need to finish doing that, but the Immortality or Bust does have a YouTube channel, and I believe I have those interviews up there for people to see. And I have a lot more that I'm going to be uploading over time.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Daniel. And I will endeavor to refer people to the Immortality or Bust YouTube channel so that they can locate those interviews. Walk us through the timeline for creating a documentary? What are the steps from concept to when it actually becomes available for people to view or to purchase or to stream?
That's a good question, because it's really about, it's sort of like, how long does it take to write a book? And what happened, what my experience with making documentaries is that you go and you shoot some, and then you start editing it together and getting a sense of what it is, and that helps inform you the next round of shooting. And then you edit, and then you do another round of shooting, and it's hard to say when it's over. I guess we started shooting Zoltan in 2015. The movie came out in 2019, so it can be quite a long process. For a long time, I thought I had the movie because his father passed, and we shot footage of his funeral, and I felt like that story was told. But it's also a process of I want to come back to community, because it's very good to get other people to see it and to get their feedback, and that's why I'm excited about the Discord community for AgeLess, because there's something that happens. Like, you think you're making one movie when you're sitting there watching it on your screen in your edit room, but once you watch it with an audience, you get a whole other impression. So I thought after Zoltan's father had passed that I was done, and I showed it to a lot of friends, a lot of filmmakers, and the feedback I was getting is that it wasn't done. And there were some specific problems creatively that were challenging. And it wasn't until I realized, what, I need to go back and interview his wife. And I added like 4 little sections, 4 little sound bites of interview with his wife, and all of a sudden it just brought the whole thing together. But I wouldn't have known, I didn't know going in that I would need that, or that would be the thing that would make it all coalesce in a finished piece of art. But that's what happened. So I can't give you a specific question of like how quickly or how long it will take. Unfortunately, it always takes a lot longer than you think, because even after then you have the finished movie, then it's getting it to market, which is a whole nother sort of process that takes a while. But I was probably finished the movie for Immortality or Bust in about 3 years, but then it took another year or two to get it to the public.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's quite helpful to give us an understanding of the time frame involved. So where is AgeLess currently in that process? What have you been able to do thus far? What remains to be done? And where can people help?
Oh, that's a good question. So AgeLess is right now just the concept. We have a deck that's posted on our Discord. We've done Zoom interviews with 20 or 30 scientists. But in my opinion, those Zoom interviews aren't going to be able to be used in the final movie, because they're just sort of gathering information and background and stuff. But we've made a lot of great. We've created a great network in the scientific community of people who are dealing with aging issues. And so now we're at the stage where we need to raise some money so that we can actually buy plane tickets and go and to the locations that these scientists are at and shoot them in person with, high quality equipment and such. So we're very much at the beginning stage, the beginning stages, but, as you can see from Immortality or Bust, like I'm the kind of person who, once I start something, it doesn't matter if it takes years, it's going to get done. We're just at this initial stage of getting it together. There's a lot of groundwork that's been done in terms of creating a network of scientists that are ready to be available to us and help us and be on camera and to refer us to other scientists. So, we're just at the beginning stage of the process, and I'm setting up the Discord, and I'll be probably within the next few weeks, I'll be actually starting the DAO for the cryptocurrency fundraising initiative.
Excellent. Well, it looks like there is a lot of ongoing activity and activity soon to come. So now let us go to questions from our panel. Let's start with Charlie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, Daniel. Congratulations on your success. I'm really impressed with the work you've done. I watched Immortality or Bust when it came out a few years back, and I thought it was really, really well crafted. It actually, had me teary-eyed at different parts. So I thought, this is a really good documentary. It's not dry at all.
Thank you.
I've had the benefit and privilege of being involved in some productions myself. I was one of the producers on the documentary about Ray Kurzweil, Transcendent Man. I was actually the one that brought William Shatner on board for that. And then I was involved in the production of The Singularity is Near, that docudrama starring Paulie Perrette that was produced by Ray Kurzweil and Martine Rothblatt. And they put some of my music into that soundtrack. So It's really a fun, it's fun to be on board with these kind of productions. And obviously it's something that I'm very much interested in with Life Extension. I look forward to your next project. You've obviously been involved in a lot of films over the years. And how do you find the difference between, years ago as opposed to now as far as distribution? Because now you have all these streaming services that are looking for content. Do you find it, easier, or what are you thinking about what you're going to do, for example, with AgeLess as compared to what you did with Immortality or Bust?
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how decentralization and the blockchain disrupt the film distribution segment. As of now, it's in a lot of ways the same model that you make an independent film and then you sell it to a distributor who then puts it out. Now the platforms have changed. When I started out, all the emphasis was on theatrical release and getting into the movie theaters, and that was sort of the main revenue stream for the property of the movie. But these days, you're right, all the streaming services are, but you still need a distributor who has those relationships and those contacts, with the streaming services. So like I said, this movie Clean that I just released, in theory, we could have tried to go to iTunes and Amazon and work out our own deals, but we signed with IFC Films. They have a relationship with iTunes. They made sure that iTunes, was putting our thumbnail of our movie on the front page, and that drove, an enormous amount of traffic. That relationship and that placement drove a lot of traffic. And, we were the #1 indie film for 2 weeks, and we peaked out at like the #3 film on iTunes at one point. And, so there's still those gatekeepers, those aggregators, and the same thing in terms of foreign sales. Like we have a foreign sales agent that needs to go territory by territory and make deals with the individual distributors in those particular countries to do that, to put it on their streaming platforms, because a lot of it is geofenced. Just like not everybody can, if you're in Latin America, you can't go to iTunes and watch a movie that was released in the United States, so you still need to have a distributor. There may be a day where you don't, but that's still currently the thing. I think that there was a sense, when the music industry got disrupted, that the artists could take a lot more control over their careers. In a lot of ways they have, but you still need, if you're not really an expert at the distribution channels, you might need help. And, I would say we're going to need help with AgeLess, getting it into all the distribution channels, and so it can be seen as widely as possible.
Well, that's great. Are you based out of LA?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay. I'm based out of Chicago, but I'm probably going to be out there soon, and it'd be great to get together. Because I know a lot of people involved in the production world and
Absolutely.
Even in
yeah, and I remember who was it? I met the director of Transcendent Man,
Barry Ptolemy.
What's that?
Barry Ptolemy.
Yeah, I met Barry, and his wife at the time. I don't know if they're still married, but while he was in production, and my head almost exploded. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're doing, a documentary on Ray Kurzweil. How awesome is that?
Yeah, that was a fun time, and that was actually I held a conference in 2007, and that's where they did the shooting for a lot of the interviews. Barry was there with his crew, and that's because I had Shatner at my conference, so it all kind of coincided in a perfect way. And I was in, and now, and I've been involved with, this whole transhumanity thing for a long time. But I had, friendships with Ray Kurzweil and Martine Rothblatt. So I was involved in that Singularity is Nearer, which was a docudrama, and it didn't get a lot of attention really, but it starred Paulie Perrette, and it was pretty good. But one of the problems that was the distribution. That's kind of why I had that question. And I know times have changed quite a lot since then. And I think I think it's better now than it was, where you can get it out more, because there is so many streaming services looking for content. But like I said, I'll probably be out that way soon, and it'd be great to get together and figure out ways to help you, get the funding for this.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, and it's such a pleasure to meet somebody that's has been there. And do you know? I'm just curious, since you had that relationship, do you know when the Singularity is Nearer, the book is coming out? It seems like it's been delayed.
Yeah, it got delayed a few times. The Singularity is Nearer, which is the follow up to his other book. It was supposed to come out, I think last year, and then now it was supposed to come out early, like the beginning of this year, but I think it got pushed back. It's either going to be later this year or the beginning of next year. Part of it is because he's a perfectionist, and there's always new things coming on the horizon, and he wants to incorporate it into his book. So, and it's tricky because that you can't, you really can't keep up with what he describes, which is the exponential rate of growth of technology. So, that's kind of where it's at, but we'll see. Hopefully I'm going to be helping him, promote that too when the time comes.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I have a saying that art is never finished, just abandoned. At a certain point you want to keep tweaking and making it better. And at a certain point you just have to just wrestle it away from the creator and put it in the distribution channel.
Yeah. That's exactly that's what's happening. So you get it. And but I look forward to seeing what AgeLess is going to be like. That's exciting, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. I'm excited.
Now, Jason, it looked like the comment that Daniel made about art never being finished resonated with you. So please share your thoughts.
That's the way it always seems like with me too. I don't consider anything I made ever done, because I always know I can always go back and make it a little bit better here and there somehow. And I love the idea that you're trying to create a community around, around this. We got a group called Future Humans Media that never really took off, but that was its basic intention, to help us with the party to create media and share our, little resources, video clips and all that. So I love that idea. I've heard about a DAO before, and that does sound very kind of interesting. So I joined your Discord server already for AgeLess, and I'm really interested in seeing how you are going to grow this community. And I'm sure I can share whatever resources I got for making stuff. I make little music videos, but nothing like, major, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I mean, that's what's exciting about the DAO and a Discord group, is that it's about community, and that so I'm really excited to see, what ideas bubble up and what resources and what, thoughts there are on the whole process. It's just really about, as a transhumanist, I really want to leverage technology to take us forward, and making a movie like AgeLess is, the intent is to help bring, the conversations that we have every day out into the mainstream, and get them to sort of think about and understand, that our species is changing and ever more rapidly. And it poses in some ways like an existential conundrum, okay, if we can upload ourselves, or if we can, 3D print every organ, or, whatever, what does it mean to be human? If we have brain computer interfaces, I think, I don't know. My personal experience is that the world has not, in large, 98% of the world has not really contemplated these ideas. And so, but it's coming quickly. So the goal with AgeLess is to help bring that conversation out to a mainstream wide audience and have them, understand and participate.
Yeah, I really like the idea how you're using NFTs for all the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor. And I mean, because I realized, there's times I put 100 hours into a little video that's 3.5 minutes long, so there's a lot of stuff, including like little bits of picture that I cut out to overlay over top of, and that's just one little bitty thing, and so there's a lot of extra material that's interesting stuff. It just never made it into the main product. So I like that idea too. So you're bringing a lot of cool ideas together. I like it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that came from talking to a cameraman. I hired a cameraman on a commercial I was doing for the California Science Center. And he didn't do it on our project, but he said that for his music clients, he just delivers his footage now as an NFT. Like that is part of him delivering the product to his clients. He delivers it as an NFT. So onward through the future, an NFT, you build a smart contract so that if it's monetized in any way going forward, he gets a percentage of that monetization as the creator. And with a DAO, what we could do is, everybody in the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization, could benefit from the monetization of that footage, let alone the finished movie. Because I believe things will be said in the course of making this film that historians will look at 50 years from now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I don't have all the details, but I can see in my head that there's got to be some system where this little piece of art that I made that this guy wants to use in his film, and it would be great in it, and yet, and I would probably love it if he used my stuff in this film, but yet it's all caught up in all this who owns who. It'd be great if he could just use it, and then I get this little bitty piece or something like that. There's got to be a system where we can all, and it creates an incentive to create instead of the disincentive.
Exactly. Yeah, and now that we're in the world of software, it can all happen automatically in the background. That you don't even have to do anything. That if somebody takes that footage and uses it, it automatically happens in the background, the transaction.
Yes, this is quite a fascinating conversation, and we have a question from a Bakwan group. What platform are you going to use for your NFTs?
See, that's a good question that I'm still doing some research on. I suspect it'll be Avalanche, because if I understand everything correctly, that can live both on Avalanche and on the Ethereum blockchain. So there's still details that have to be worked out, and I wish I understood all the technical stuff thoroughly, but I'm in the process of figuring it out, and we'll have that sorted out in the next couple of weeks what that decision is. But quite likely Avalanche.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Daniel, and we look forward to finding out what your decision ultimately ends up being. Now, I have a question along the lines of the conversation you had.
And actually,
yes, go ahead.
I just want to go back to what platform it should be on. I mean, this is one of the great things about the Discord is that people can put their 2 cents in, like, Avalanche is not the best platform because you can't do this, or that's one of the reasons why I want to set up why I set up the Discord, so people can give their opinion about the best smart contract to use for the NFT. So I'm sorry, go on.
All right. Well, anybody who wants to join the Discord community, I've just posted the link once again. So please contribute any ideas you might have for what platform could be used to host these NFTs, as well as other input that you would have at this early stage of the creation of AgeLess. My question was in connection with the distributor entity that you would use, and I certainly understand the value of that entity's connections of a pre-existing network of outlets, essentially, where the film could be shown. Now, do these distributors these days have any control over the content, any ability to decide, this might not be suitable for the mass market, or you should do X, Y, or Z instead of A, B, and C? Or are they going to essentially take it or leave it in terms of your product, and would you still have complete creative control over it?
Well, first of all, it's you don't get what's fair, you get what you negotiate. So it's all a matter of the negotiating process about where things end up. Typically with an independent film, because you've made it and you've shown its value and you've brought it to a distributor, they generally see that value and purchase it on the basis of that value and don't want a lot of changes. Now, however, with once you get into the foreign sales side of it, there will often be requests to make some adjustments for individual territories. Let's say, in Immortality or Bust, they're sitting there with John McAfee, and John McAfee drinks some of a beer, in Islamic countries, it may come back like you need to edit that shot out or find some other way to do this scene without that. That does sometimes come up. But hopefully if you've made your film right, there's not going to be a lot of requests for changes because you've proven that it has value by the time you get to the negotiating table for a distributor to buy it and release it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And it does seem like in most cases these days, the distributors would actually want to see some sort of finished product, and then they would say, yes, this makes sense for us to help spread and earn part of the revenue as a result of doing so. Now
which is what happened with Immortality or Bust. Like we made Immortality or Bust. I did a crowdfunding campaign, and we made Immortality or Bust. And it wasn't until it premiered at the Raw Science Film Festival and it was a completed film, then I was able to get a sales agent, and that sales agent sold it to Gravitas Films, who are the ones putting it into distribution now and getting and distributing the revenues. But they took it as is. They didn't ask for any changes.
Yes, and I'm glad that that's the case, because that means the vision that you had as a filmmaker was preserved and it wasn't diluted in the name of perhaps greater mass appeal. But I think actual mass appeal can only be achieved if the creator's vision is consistently followed. Now, yes, indeed. We have an interesting question from our friend Daniel Twet, and he wonders, doesn't a Creative Commons or public domain content license create more opportunities for disseminating education? And he's referring to models like, for instance, Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and there is a lot of content there that gets used. With regard to content that can get monetized, of course, there are YouTube videos that use a Creative Commons license, but they can still have ad revenue, for instance, or super chats, donations associated with them. And I have quite a bit of my own content available via a Creative Commons license, so other people may reuse it, but I still get the vast majority of the views on that content as the person who published it originally. And it seems that works for certain kinds of content, maybe not the main film, but the auxiliary content, the other footage that you shot that might not be available at all otherwise unless you released it in some format. Do you think a Creative Commons type of approach could work for that auxiliary content?
I do possibly. There's a lot of factors to take into account. I like the idea in general. The whole blockchain, putting it on the blockchain is one thing. Like I'd have to see if that is in conflict of the public domain Creative Commons, because you're basically creating a legal contract with anybody who would be using it. And in order to have that contract, you would have to, you have to have an IP owner, somebody who owns the intellectual property, which in this case would be the DAO, an autonomous organization. But I would definitely look into that. If I felt, the main thing is to try to get the message out, and if that helps get the message out further, that's awesome. There's also a fiduciary responsibility to anybody who's coming in to invest in it, to have returns. So if all that can be squared away and settled, then that and it helps get it out further, I would definitely consider doing that.
Yes, indeed. And one aspect to consider is one can place certain limitations on a Creative Commons license. For instance, one could have a Creative Commons non-commercial license where if somebody wants to use the content for a non-commercial purpose, like an educational lecture, for example, they're welcome to do so. But if they want themselves to monetize the content, then they would need some sort of special permission, some sort of special arrangement, maybe some revenue sharing. Likewise, there's a share alike type of component to the Creative Commons license, and most creators do that. So anybody who shares the content would share it under the same restrictions as the original license to make sure that, once again, the creator gets to control the spread. And Creative Commons is consistent with copyright in the sense that you do have the original owner of the intellectual property still setting these conditions. It's just a standardized way of making certain kinds of decisions. So that's one possibility. Now, another possibility that was raised by our viewer Duke Nukem is integrating tokens into DRM for pay per play. And he states it wouldn't be that difficult. I would invite Duke Nukem to elaborate a bit more in the chat, perhaps, because this is another useful idea to consider. Now, Zach Richardson asks, understanding our time is constrained, can we still get a summarization or overview of the science presented in the presentation? I assume, Zach, you mean the slide deck for AgeLess, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of names in longevity right now, and everybody knows Aubrey. There's David Sinclair. I really enjoy Rhonda Patrick. But some of them just recent times. So I guess the question is, what is the overview of some of the science if you had to summarize or condense it? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we do. Let me bring up can I share my screen?
Yes, please do try sharing your screen, and then when I see it, I will elevate it to the mainstream.
Okay. I'm just trying to get the deck in front of me, and yeah. So here's the group that we've spoken to already. Let me just share.
Yes, and for those of you who want to follow along with the deck, I have posted the link here, and I'm also now featuring the deck on Daniel's screen.
So right now, our main scientific advisor is Nir Barzilai, but we have some of these you may recognize. We have Maria Blasco, we have Laura Deming. We have a lot of people in the scientific community that are working in this space who are, and this is where we start. This is at the starting line. Obviously, or in my experience with documentaries is you go and you interview one person and they point you to two more, and then you just keep following all these rabbit holes. But these are the people that we've already spoken to who have said that they will participate in the movie.
Great. And if you'd like to show any other aspects of the slide deck, feel free to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll walk through it just a little bit. So it's really about the massive impact longevity will bring as biological aging becomes treatable. And, a little bit of a thought experiment is nursing homes had glass walls, everyone would be a longevity advocate. And then Galia, who's going to be the director, saw her father pass and was there. And that spurred her through to talk to all these experts. And as somebody who wasn't aware of the space, like I think everybody, watching this is, she was really shocked to find how far we've come, how far, how close finding something like this is doable and reachable. And then, both Joe Lacroix and Laurie Deming were talking about how the biggest bottleneck isn't the funding. It's getting people involved, inspiring those young scientists and the young people to go into this area, and really it's about, which is the great tool of film. Film is something that can create like deep and long-lasting change. I don't know if you guys remember Super Size Me, but it was a documentary that caused McDonald's to phase out supersized fries. Blackfish helped to change the way whales were kept in captivity, and on and on and on. There's all these great examples of how documentaries can bring awareness into the public space, and and then for me, the downstream impact of that is a political one. Like if everybody is aware of, let's say, the FDA and how important it is to change their processes so we can get a lot of this new exciting technology online sooner to save people's lives, then if a lot of people know that that's the problem, they can bring that to their legislatures and put political pressure, for things to happen. The deck is on our Discord. You're welcome to see it. I'll put a link here too if anybody wants to, if we want to put it here. And yeah, now it's
thanks. That was a great summary. I can find the deck. I'll look at it. I appreciate you showing me that.
Ooh, you're on Canva?
Well, the director created the deck on Canva. Yeah. Is there a problem with that?
Zach's got a cool thing on Canva. It's kind of neat.
All of my production stuff is Canva. So
it's on Canva.
Fantastic service. I love them.
Yeah, it's been working well for us. It's easy to change and do things with. So I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, and I can upload materials that other people can then use and stuff, and vice versa. And so yeah, it's good to be able to share some stuff that I think. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, indeed. So thank you, Daniel, for walking us through the presentation for AgeLess, and I did link to the slide deck in the chat so people can watch it and also listen to the short embedded video excerpts from the various scientists who were interviewed thus far. Also, I would like to thank our longtime viewer, John H. He says the market was bad this week, but the bills still have to get paid. So thank you, John, for your super chat. And it's interesting too, John mentioned the Super Size Me documentary by Morgan Spurlock, and that's a famous example of an independent film that went quite far in terms of capturing the public's attention. Do you think films about longevity, life extension, transhumanism have that same potential in our current culture?
I do. So back in the early 90s, I made a documentary on hip hop. And at the time when we started it, well, I guess MTV had just started playing hip hop videos, and, but it was sort of like a subculture that wasn't mainstream, but I could see the wave coming, that hip hop was going to be like enormously popular. And we made this documentary, and it did very well. And, I feel like these ideas are in the same place right now. I don't know. Unfortunately, sometimes I see too far ahead, or I see around the curve too far. Sometimes the stuff that I think about or do is out a little earlier than the curve. Like I was into NFTs 4 years ago, and it was, if I had stayed with it, like I would have been in like this amazing financial place, but I was like too far ahead of the curve. And to me, like the transhumanism is a little bit about that, is a little bit like that, but there's no doubt in my mind that there is a wave coming that is public awareness, public adoption, public understanding of transhumanism, of the exponential growth of technology, the implications of the exponential growth of technology, the singularity. I think that mainstream worldwide understanding, adoption, and interest in this topic is coming, and I think it's coming soon. I think it's in a very different place before we made Immortality or Bust, and now. I think that there's a lot more awareness now than when we started making Immortality or Bust, and I think that it's growing.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And I would echo that, having essentially very closely tracked the state of the transhumanist movement since 2014, and of course, especially since 2016, when I became the chairman of the US Transhumanist Party. And I definitely agree with you, Daniel. Many people in our movement tend to have this visionary aspect to their personalities, where they embrace particular ideas or particular ways of doing things a few years before the general public does, sometimes even decades before the general public does. But if they do persevere and maintain their commitment, then at the time these ideas become more mainstream, they will be in the prime position to benefit. And this is why I keep telling people in the transhumanist community, stay the course, don't rebrand, don't shift toward a more timid message, because at some point in time, the tides of public opinion will turn. And what we're doing right now, and what we have done over the past 2 decades, essentially, will be seen as highly visionary, quite ahead of its time. Now, I also want to thank Alan Crowley for his generous super chat. He says, if something in today's presentation sparked a light for you, please consider a donation to help keep the lights on. Thank you very much, Alan. We greatly appreciate it. And we also have a comment from Duke Nukem, who elaborates upon his suggestion. He writes, videos could be freely shared via torrent or USB with proper payment for play using an HSM-backed DRM. HSMs are becoming standard with many PCs. So thank you for that, Duke Nukem. And Zach, I believe you had a comment as well.
Yeah, I guess I would say I popped right on your Discord server, and I noticed I was wondering when you created it, because I see 34 people, and I see like a lot of communities that it could be spread and cross-posted into. If you're in the private chat for this, I mentioned a few of them. I posted to immediately. Viewer count didn't explode 200 times more like I kind of hoped it would, but there are definitely communities that would be very interested in this message. It's a unique one because there's such there's a difference, a shift between saying I want to live longer and I want to live forever. The second one sounds a little bit more crazy, but it's the one that pushes the Overton window in such a way that you end up having people who are discussing aging say, not, well, should we or should we not work on life extension? They end up saying, how much life extension should we work on? And I think that's extremely valuable in what we're doing, and that we can push that narrative more towards, we want to go all the way. So that was my comment.
Yeah, I think it's a big debate in the scientific community. Like I feel like there's to me, like this false partition between like the scientists and the transhumanists. There's I feel like there's a bit of an aversion to like the term transhumanism, or saying immortality, on the scientific side, and then on the transhumanist side, there's they don't want to get bogged down. They see the vision. They just want to get there, and they don't like all these scientific sort of, obstacles, that scientists might put up. And we were having this debate internally with the film, the filmmakers just the other day. By the way, the Discord's been up for less than a month. I just put it up, and I'm in a phase of community growing now, but we're doing the same thing. I mean, that's like the scientists that we're talking to are like a little bit nervous about like the words immortality or that sort of thing. And I said, what they don't understand is that we both want, everybody wants the same thing. We want to extend our health span. We want to, some of us think that could be indefinite. Whether or not it will happen, or when it will happen, or how it happens, doesn't matter. Like, we're both going in the exact same direction in terms of creating technology and that will enable us to live healthier, longer lives. So there's no, it's kind of a false, to me, it's like this false sort of sense of semantics about whether you say immortality or not, or you say you're a transhumanist or not. It's really about, okay, if we are able to shorten, like stop telomeres from dividing and grow them, if we're able to, do these very specific scientific things, the benefits will be there. And none of us know the future. And to argue about the semantics of it is creates division rather than the true unity we should all have about, this endeavor,
Yes,
the work
indeed.
you're doing is extremely important. We currently mark our time based on a man coming back to life. I feel like there will be a whole new era when we get to the point when death is completely abolished, and it's something that was in the past. It will be the age where people look back on it like they look at having a cart with a mule. They'll be like, oh, that's horrible. People died. That's how'd that happen?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
indeed.
it's just so far around the corner that people just can't hardly wrap their brains around it. And so they just don't, it makes it too hard for them to, grasp it. I love documentaries, by the way. I mean, I wish there would have been way more documentaries in school. When I do most of my self-learning, I love documentaries, So I do think they can influence culture and everything else. A good movie, everybody loves good movies, Go ahead.
Yes, I concur, and I would echo the idea that it's a false dichotomy to essentially draw this sharp distinction between incremental scientific advances and our end goal, because the incremental scientific advances would help us get there. I just wish that certain people were a bit more accepting of those who do see toward the end goal. I understand that for scientists, it can be challenging because they see the everyday problems, and they're real problems within the field that need to be overcome. And yet, on a longer time scale, historically, those kinds of problems have been overcome, and there's no reason to assume that they're going to be intractable. So keeping that fundamental vision of the outcomes we want to reach in mind is a great motivator for thinking creatively, for overcoming problems, for drawing new people into the field. Because as various scientists have said, and you've quoted a few of them, but another person who has really emphasized this in recent months is Aubrey de Grey. We do face a bottleneck of talent now in the field. The longevity research field has gotten an unprecedented infusion of funding, but now there are not enough skilled scientists who are actually fully dedicated toward projects in this space. So one aspect of this, of course, is the technical training for these scientists, but the other aspect is, how do you broaden the talent pipeline? How do you draw more people into the field? And it's precisely through this hopeful, optimistic, highly ambitious vision, which I hope that films like yours can achieve, Daniel. And I have a recommendation along these lines, but before I make it, I'd like to thank Duke Nukem for his very generous super chat. Thank you very much. It's clear that Duke Nukem wants to help out our efforts, so I really appreciate it. And my suggestion for you, Daniel, is to look at some additional scientists who I think would be quite happy to be interviewed for your documentary. One of them, of course, is Dr. Aubrey de Grey himself. Another one is Dr. Bill Andrews, who is a good friend of mine. I've run races with Bill Andrews. And Greg Fay is another scientist whom we've had as a guest on one of our virtual Enlightenment salons, but he has been doing
I
the
think I
trim
reached out
trial.
to, I just reached out to Greg, and yes, all these people are on my list as well. I'm the director did all this initial work, and so this was the list of the people that she connected and she brought in. And in the course of making a documentary, as I say, like you go down all these paths, and we, like I said, I interviewed Bill Anders for Immortality or Bust, and would love to. I'm a big fan of his work. I'd love to do that again. And
Yes.
obviously, Aubrey is a visionary who has changed the space, enormously.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Aubrey is one of those people who was not afraid to speak about this vision in the year 2000, when virtually nobody was using the rhetoric of longevity, escape velocity, for instance, or reversing aging. Most people in the field were focused in a very abstract way on trying to understand the mechanisms of aging a bit better. But Aubrey introduced this engineering focus damage repair approach that I think since that time has really catalyzed investment and research progress in the field. So he would be a great addition to your interviewees for AgeLess. Now, I also wanted to ask if Art Ramon had a question or comment.
Yes, as far as the DAO creation, what sort of costs are involved? Are you using a company that does this as a service? Are you hiring someone like on Fiverr? How are you doing the DAO?
Right, that's a good question. So we already have sort of on our team like executive producer type level people who are experienced at launching DAOs. And it's not that hard to do. I mean, we will have gas fees, in the process of creating the DAO, and certainly, making the footage an NFT or NFTs. So we have to be prepared for those gas costs. But it seems to be, and what I'm being shown is that it's relatively easy to do. I need to drill down a bit more, and we'll go create a Medium article where we sort of lay everything out about exactly how it's going to work and what platform and all that stuff. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks that I'll be publishing a Medium article that will break all those elements down. Like I said, right now I'm community building, but we do have some people on the team that create DAOs, create NFTs, and are really deep into the crypto space and know a lot of other people deep in the crypto space. So we do have those members of the community already.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we have a comment from John H. following up on the discussion about Aubrey de Grey. Aubrey's experience as a computer guy might have been important in arriving at that repair as needed approach. And it's true, Aubrey comes from an IT background, very much focused on solving specific problems, finding the bugs in the code, so to speak, and then fixing them. So great insight from John. And our friend Mike Lazine has mentioned a documentary that he believes is the only one that has been released in movie theaters during COVID that he has seen. It is called No Safe Spaces, and it was created by Adam Carolla and Dennis Prager. It's about the various issues surrounding free speech on university campuses and how free speech has unfortunately been suppressed all too often. Are you familiar with that documentary at all, Daniel?
I have a vague awareness of it. I have not seen it. I know what it's about, and I think it's an important conversation to have. Yeah, I think it's an important, and I think it applies, to some of what we're talking about here. I think there's a difference between, public pressure and censorship. But it definitely, the whole space has definitely changed, and to me, it's always interesting this sort of, like when you make movies, when you make a science fiction movie, the idea is generally that you can change like one thing, like that robots are sentient, but you can't. But in order to be able to tell a good story, you can't really show that how everything else about the world is different, and has evolved. You have to just sort of stay focused on that one thing in your science fiction movie that's different and show the implications of that, But the reality is like the exponential growth of technology is bringing change in every aspect, every corner of our lives. And I feel like this safe space issue is part of an outgrowth of the exponential growth of technology and the communication tools that are available to us. And it's just, to me, it's not unrelated, just like that, you have trolls, they, on the internet, and you have, like Twitter and all these places that people can comment on anonymously, and that creates one atmosphere that's being sort of responded to by another group that want to create these safe spaces, so that there's not, anyhow, it's I think it's related, the no safe spaces idea. I have not seen the documentary, but I would like to, and I've heard about it.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for your thoughts on this issue, Daniel. And it does seem to me that we have opportunities to spread ideas that would have been quite difficult at the very least, even 5, especially 10 years ago. I've been on YouTube since late 2007, and I remember back when YouTube had a 10-minute time limit on videos, and when essentially the only video format available was just a person sitting in front of a webcam and often having to use YouTube's own glitchy software to record themselves talking. And now, of course, we have the ability to hold events like this one, and the technology involved is fairly widely accessible. But getting all of these great minds together from all over the world is just an astonishing feat of technology. But on the other hand, not everyone uses that capability productively. So how do we get to a point where the discourse is largely constructive, where it's largely uplifting, and where there aren't restrictions on truly beneficial or constructive discourse? That's what worries me about algorithmic censorship. It's what worries me about speech codes and prior restraints on expression, because I think more often than not, they tend to stifle the kind of discourse that we actually want to hear and participate in. But this is, of course, an issue of ongoing significance to our community and many others online. And hopefully, as this technology becomes more widespread, people will experiment with it, and people will develop social norms that will harness it toward more productive ends. So definitely an important area to continue the conversation on. Now I would like to ask Ben Ballweg if he has any questions for Daniel.
I am trying to think how I would ask this. It's something along the lines of with Zoltan Istvan kind of saying like he was doing the Immortality bus tour to provoke, because without provocation, the concept wouldn't get out to the masses. And by you directing and promoting that movie, you are also trying to essentially provoke people to watch something that might have challenged their beliefs. And I wondered what your strategies were for provoking people to watch things that might even make them a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think every movie has its own sort of unique landscape to it. One of the things that I love about Zoltan and that really drew me to him is that he really understands press, publicity, public relations, like how to get people's awareness and how to hook them in, and that was fascinating to me to watch him do that, and it was enormously helpful in the whole process of bringing awareness to the film itself. I think Ageless is going to be a different type of movie where we're not going to be as provocative, not trying to find that hook, that we're going to hopefully use the awe and wonder of the science itself to be that unique selling tool to bring to the public and to get it adopted by the masses or seen by a lot of people. I think he's right, and for me, making Immortality or Bust was not about being provocative. For me, making Immortality or Bust was creating a historical document, to show that this man went to Washington, D.C., to advocate for the legal rights of artificial intelligence. To me, like, that is something that in 50 years, it's going to be important that we have this document that there was that person doing that, because people are going to want to, as these issues, the thing about the DAO, it's a decentralized autonomous organization, that it's not owned by a corporation, that it's owned by the community, and it owning intellectual property is something that looks like we'll be able to do if we set it up in Wyoming legally. That's a brand new thing. Now that 50 years from now may be just standard. I mean, hopefully, I assume, will be just standard type of operating procedure. And in 50 years in the future, artificial intelligence, robots, will have all sorts of legal rights. But the historians then will be looking back at like when and how did that happen. And for me, making Immortality or Bust was not so much about being provocative. It was about having a historical document that this is the time that people really started to understand these issues and do something about it. Also, for me too, Immortality or Bust was about, the thing that amazed me the most of making Immortality or Bust was realizing there were all these pockets of transhumanists all around the country that weren't necessarily aware of each other, or maybe had some awareness of each other, but being able to just group and gather all these like-minded thinkers, it was very inspiring to me, because I think just doing that was a big part of making that movie too, is just realizing that it's a much larger community than I think anybody that was in any individual part of that community was aware of, and that was what was important to me about it too. But every movie has its own unique properties to it, and the thing about making a documentary is that it has to tell you what it is. It's hard to impose on the documentary what it's going to be, and I'm going to be listening as we make the documentary about like what are those unique things that we can hook onto as promotional tools, public relations tools, and publicity tools to draw the broader public into it. It doesn't necessarily have to be provocative, but I think Zoltan was right in his approach. And I think him doing something sort of really outlandish and provocative did bring a lot of press to his work and to the film.
Our guest last week, Ilya Stambler, was talking about that as activists, the job is to gather and to publish. So I'm glad you brought back that gather element too, that he was able to gather transhumanists from the little pockets and bring them together. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I can still see the effects of what you've done. So I think all of us here deserve, or you deserve, gratitude from all of us, because that seems to be where it all seems to come together. Zoltan and that trip, with the Immortality Bust. So that, that is when we coalesced as a burgeoning community, and so thanks, personally, thank you.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I didn't even say, like, in terms of historical document, I mean, we have documented the birth of the Transhumanist Party, which is only going to get bigger and stronger and more influential over time, and so it was important for me to document it so that people can look back and say, like, oh, this is where it started and look how far it's come.
Yes, absolutely. And the Immortality bus tour, Zoltan's 2014 to 2016 presidential campaign, are a part of our history. And they're a part of transhumanist lore, so to speak. And I think as the party develops, people will look back at those early days and they will see some of the initial ideas that animated the movement. And they will also be able to reflect upon how far those ideas have come, how they have become more mainstream over time. A great example is the concept of universal basic income. Zoltan was one of the first people to advocate for it in a political context. There were prior formulations of universal basic income by people such as Scott Santens and Charles Murray, for instance, who have their own approaches. But Zoltan had this very interesting idea of a federal land dividend where companies would be able to lease federal land and it would not involve any taxation of the general public. So this was a concept that I think is going to make further appearances in American politics because it's a very intriguing way of solving some of the societal problems that exist, particularly with the economic precariousness that many Americans experience, without further burdening those Americans through taxation. Our friend Skip Siddiqui from the DC Transhumanist Party writes that transhumanist history was made in DC when Zoltan in late 2015 attached very briefly the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, the version 1.0 of the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, to the walls of the US Capitol. And of course, the police essentially asked him to remove that immediately afterward. But for the purposes of our history, for the purposes of what people remember, it was that one moment of him doing that that sticks in people's awareness. And since that time, of course, we've had two further versions of the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, version 2.0, which was released in very early 2017, and version 3.0, which was released in late 2018. That's the current version, but they have as their ancestor that very short 6-article version 1 that Zoltan very briefly attached to the walls of the Capitol building. And I wonder to what extent you think that Zoltan was consciously creating this kind of mythology where he knew that at the moment it would be a fairly small act, a fairly easy act to achieve, and yet later on it would take on this much larger significance, primarily symbolically, as people looking back at that time period will say, oh, it started in this way.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what attracted me to Zoltan is just, he's the kind of guy that would just throw 500 books into a boat and decide to sail around the world, with no real plan or training or what have you. He caught malaria a couple of times, he had all sorts of problems, but the strength of his vision was so strong. And I feel that way about the Immortality bus tour. It's like, he had this vision and we got in that bus and we pulled out and it just started pouring oil out of it, and those little problems aren't, he knew that those little problems weren't what was going to be remembered, and when we went to the Capitol, there was a Capitol policeman standing there, basically saying, do not put that on the wall. Do not put that on the wall. But Zoltan knew that it was an important symbolic moment to at least have the paper on the wall and his hand on the paper, to say that he had done it and that this had happened, and as it was, and he immediately had to take it back off, and then he went and delivered it to, our senator, in California at the time was Barbara Boxer, to deliver it to her office as an official way of saying, presenting it. And like you said, the Transhumanist Bill of Rights has gone through 2 revisions now, and will go through probably many more. And as it gets more widely understood and as technology evolves, but we captured that moment, where a Transhumanist Bill of Rights was created and presented, yeah, that's what's exciting. It was exciting to me to be a part of, and I feel like with this next movie, there's going to be all sorts of other moments like that we'll be able to capture and share.
Yes,
also,
absolutely.
That Transhumanist Bill of Rights, that's part of the reason why I'm here. So what you guys did create in those early days is a good foundation that has the ability to grow because it's good. I've read the platform. That's what brought me here. I also should mention that a lot of those transhumanists in the early days and what they probably suffered, at the hands of being so visionary, deserve our thanks, because we're really the beneficiaries of their efforts, and like, for me, I really, my life kind of changed and I started coming online around, 2018, 19. And so I came to transhumanism sort of late, but I didn't really get that much, pushback over it. No, I just hear, oh, well, what's that? And then I tell them, and it's no big deal. But, when it first started, I imagine some people probably, had to go through some things that I don't really have to go through now. So I just, thanks, for that. That's all I wanted to say.
Yes, yeah, what I would say that you're also, Jason, an early adopter, and that there will be people that'll look back and thank you, in 5 or 10 years, for the work you're doing right now.
Yes, absolutely. And we have a comment along these lines from John H., who says, "We're early. They're very early. The earlier transhumanists, people like Zoltan." And John also elaborates, "We weren't on the Mayflower, or for that matter, the White Lion, but we weren't far behind either." Mike Lazine says, "I thank Zoltan Istvan for running in 2016 for President of the United States, and that led to Mike joining the U.S. Transhumanist Party in 2019. So for many people, indeed, that campaign was a pivotal moment in terms of raising their awareness of transhumanism and its possibilities, and motivating them to become involved. So indeed, it is quite an important set of events to document. And Daniel, I know you've spoken a bit with regard to this, but could you elaborate on your thoughts as to what aspects of Zoltan's approach, in your view, made him most effective during that early era in the U.S. Transhumanist Party's history in terms of spreading the message, making people understand what transhumanism stands for, and drawing them into the movement, even with residual effects many years later?
It's one of those opportunity meeting preparation moments from my perspective, that, he had spent, 10 years plus as a journalist and understanding journalism and building a journalist network, so that when the time came to do the Immortality or Bust tour, he had this deep wealth of understanding about what works in terms of public opinion. And he had these deep set of contacts, so that, getting the New York Times, Newsweek, and all these publications to write about it and cover it and such. He had done, the work had been at least a decade, maybe 20 years before that. All the groundwork had been laid, so that when he did this, announced his candidacy and did this tour, and he knew to do something that would be interesting for journalists to cover, the legacy of that is that a lot of people know about, transhumanism, the Transhumanist Party, the Immortality or Bust tour. So I think that was the determining factor, is just like the amount of preparedness he had in the space of journalism and public relations, that he was able to be incredibly effective at getting the word out.
Yes, he definitely had and still has that skill set, because he has gone on to other endeavors that employed those capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we also, of course, have our 2020 presidential candidate in this discussion, and I think Charlie can provide a unique perspective on how Zoltan's campaign during his early years influenced Charlie, and what Charlie was able to learn and derive from that. And how do you think that shaped the history of the U.S. Transhumanist Party? Where do you think the Transhumanist Party can go next with that kind of legacy?
Oh, well, yeah, when I was running, I did look to Zoltan as an example of what a way to kind of promote the ideas, because he was so effective. He kind of was it was different for him than it was for me, because he was essentially this groundbreaker, and he did a lot of things that were provocative, and mine was more of a, we were already established. We had there was a primary, and then there was an election. I mean, where there was a choice of a vice president, Liz Parrish, which I thought was the best thing that I did, was to bring her on board, because she's brilliant. And so, it was a different kind of approach and a different presentation, but we still, wanted to try to move the whole agenda forward as much as possible. And it was nice to have the kind of interest around the world, literally, due to what Zoltan had already kind of broke ground on. I mean, I think that's why we were able to get those kind of interviews. So, and for me, I think my situation was almost like a bridge to the next step, which would be where, we go to getting monetization, getting money funded for the USTP, which that kind of wasn't the situation for us, because obviously there was reasons. But, the next candidate, or perhaps the next one after that, would be where we can really get into being on the stage, or being at least getting a chance to get onto to a debate platform with some major candidates. And I do think that there's an opportunity now, because I see what's happening with the current parties. The unfortunate circumstance that I faced, and that we still have, is that this is really a dominant two-party system in this country, and that's just really unfair. But one of the parties is kind of really fallen apart here because of their leader, or their ex-leader now, and they don't even present a platform anymore. So I think there's an opportunity now for a third party to at least gain a foothold, and then to grow into something bigger, and maybe kind of stop this duopoly we have. And then that would be a benefit to everyone. I mean, not just in our country, but around the world, really. And I think the Transhumanist Party is right at the forefront of the ideas that need to be implemented. Like you mentioned with universal basic income, I think there's going to be a lot more things of technology, with regard to technology, that need to be involved in the whole political process. I mean, you can see from when they were interviewing Mark Zuckerberg in the Congress, and they didn't even know how to ask him questions. So we kind of need that. We need that to be a big part of the next election phase as they come forward. And I think that's why it was so important that Zoltan finally broke that opened it up, and that I was able to carry forward with Liz. And I look forward to what's going to happen next. I think there's a big opportunity here to really grow the Transhumanist Party. And I think it's all kind of culminating in a really great way.
Yes, indeed. I completely agree with your remarks, Charlie. And also, I would encourage everyone to check out I Am the Very Model of a Singularitarian, which is one of many music videos that Charlie has created, another avenue for getting people to be exposed to the ideas of transhumanism in a lighthearted, amusing kind of manner. Also, these videos sometimes tell very interesting stories. Alan Crowley says to Charlie, "Congratulations." And he wonders, what do we need for the street teams? Yard signs, t-shirts, business cards, supporting your Twitter feed. And there are many actions that one can already take. Of course, we do have a Twitter account. The handle is US Transhumanist. I will share it shortly. And please do like and retweet and engage with our content there. We now have an online store of merchandise that Art Ramon has designed, and you can get t-shirts, mugs, bumper stickers, other types of accessories that feature the US Transhumanist logo in various designs. So Daniel is wearing one of the shirts from the early era of the Transhumanist Party when Zoltan launched his campaign, but we have other updated designs now as well. And we are accumulating the money that we have raised through the super chats. We spent some of it on website hosting and maintenance, but we have about $254 left over from the previous year, and we're hoping to grow that substantially and use that for outreach and activism. So thank you, Alan, for your enthusiasm. And now I want to feature this comment from Luis Arroyo. The two-party system demands that we work outside of traditional politics or electoral politics because the two-party system has created such high barriers to entry for people seeking to be alternative candidates like Zoltan. And Zoltan recognized even ballot access was a nearly insurmountable type of challenge with his resources. And for Charlie, we had to undertake a write-in campaign because ballot access was made even more difficult by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we didn't want to risk our petitioners becoming exposed to, at that time, the novel coronavirus. At the same time, most states did not really relax restrictions for in-person hand-signed petitions that were simultaneously illegal to gather because of the lockdowns. So it was indeed quite an uphill battle, but I think through the media campaign that we undertook, we were still able to reach a decent number of people. So I wonder, Daniel, what lessons about unconventional politics did Zoltan teach you that were apparent when you were filming the documentary?
I don't know if I have a good question to that. I think it's changed because Gennady, you're actually trying to turn this into a real political party, and I think that Zoltan had a slightly different purpose in mind. I think it was much more of awareness, like creating awareness. And as anything grows and changes, the sort of challenges, grow and change. I think, I think there's how do you sort of, like he was very provocative to create all this attention, but then so provocative so it might not be able to be taken seriously, in a way. So, and now through the work that you guys are doing and Charlie and Liz and, like you're it's in some ways it's a heavier lift because you're not just trying to create attention. You're actually trying to make those inroads, that the hard work. And I think Zoltan realized it at the time, that the work to actually get on ballots, the work to actually build the infrastructure for a political party is formidable, and I think that the work that all of you guys are doing now is that formidable work that maybe wasn't, like I was saying, his strong suit was bringing attention, but I don't think that was his strong suit, was to do the hard work of, forming, making inroads, the consistency of showing up every week and moving the ball a little bit forward, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like his strength was creating attention, and it feels like where the party's at now is building the deeper roots and the infrastructure and the organization to so that the party can grow beyond a one person figurehead party.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that assessment, Daniel. And we have been trying to create infrastructure for the Transhumanist Party so that it doesn't have to depend on one charismatic individual. And Zoltan certainly is a highly charismatic, highly driven individual and driving individual, literally, given what he did with the Immortality bus. But he did it essentially all himself with a little bit of help from camera crews and volunteers like Rowan Horn. But when he handed over the chairmanship of the US Transhumanist Party to me, there were really three members of the Transhumanist Party: Zoltan, Rowan, and myself. And we have grown this to over 3,700 members. So that is growth of more than 3 orders of magnitude. And I'm quite pleased at that. Of course, we have a long way to go to develop the kind of infrastructure where we truly can respond and also be proactive in all of the areas where we need to be involved. For instance, tracking legislation at a state-by-state level, opining on ballot issues, having enough people on the ground that we can viably gather petition signatures, at least in local races, and holding events, local meetups, not necessarily centrally organized, but organized by our representatives in various communities, as well as continuing to build international ties. So I want to recognize our friends from Tufts, the Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussions, who have joined us in the chat. And they also say thank you, USTP, for your support thus far. And we have built a lot of connections in places like Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Europe as well. Tufts will be hosting a seminar in Africa on March 24th and the 25th, which I would encourage anybody who is interested in attending that seminar to do so. The theme of that seminar is seizing our singularity future for the development of Africa. And I think to a large extent, Zoltan's campaign and the early work done by transhumanists in prior years and decades have set the stage now where transhumanism is really a burgeoning movement in Africa. We have also the Transhuman Coin project, and a lot of the holders of Transhuman Coin are based in countries like South Africa and Nigeria. One of the individuals who founded Transhuman Coin is Dr. Charles Awuzie, who is the best known proponent of transhumanism in Africa now. And all of this has happened very recently, and it has been happening on an international level, not just within the United States. So along these lines, Daniel, you mentioned, of course, that when science fiction writers or even more prosaic prognosticators of the future try to imagine a future world, they most often fall into the trap of changing just one aspect in a radical way and assuming that everything else is going to stay the same. I'm curious how you might envision the future of the transhumanist movement in a dynamic world where so many factors change, and not just in terms of technology and synergies among different fields of technology, but also in terms of, let's say, the globalization of ideas, having places like Africa and Southeast Asia come online, so to speak. Of course, they've already come online, but come online in terms of seriously engaging with our movement and the ideas of our movement and creating versions of it in their own countries and regions. How do you think that's going to affect the intellectual landscape of transhumanism and the progress of this movement?
Well, I don't know if I'm the best person to opine because I'm a filmmaker and I can talk a lot about film. It's a little bit harder for me to opine on the the bigger geopolitical repercussions. But I do have to say that I'm psyched about transhuman coin. I think that this space, it's important to be part of the future, the next step of the future that we can see. I think it is important to step into it, and I mean, I think a lot of us feel like that borders are kind of silly, and I think the internet has shown that, certainly, and the blockchain, proves that every day, that, and and even like Zoom and the way we're communicating now, like physical space, and physical borders are less and less relevant. And in the big picture, I mean, obviously, like what's happening in Ukraine, like the physical border is like very, very relevant. But I think that in terms of the world of ideas, they are not contained by space anymore. And I think that's going to be even more so. What it's going to look like in the future is so hard to say. Like I remember in 1990, like running around like with my hair on fire, trying to explain to anybody who had listened to me that the internet was going to envelop every nook and crevice of our lives. It was going to be everywhere all the time, ubiquitous. And what I was getting back from other people was, but why would I use email, when the postal service works just fine, and like just a complete lack of comprehension about like what I was saying. And even I, at that moment, could never have envisioned us doing this salon. You couldn't envision, using Uber and, all these amazing apps or social media, or, like there's so much that I just knew it was going to be big and it was going to influence us tremendously. And that's the way I feel about exponential technology now. I mean, like we do have some guidelines that Ray Kurzweil has given us about, some things that will happen in the future, but everything else is going to change too. And just like, I don't think there's a disconnection from the exponential growth of technology and the current political state. We're going to have a multiplying effect, as time continues. And, where the technology is at now is going to be 10x, 100x, 1000x, in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the implications of that are going to be just as massive in sort of the political space. And it's hard to know now exactly what that will look like, I think. But I think the trend is the world is getting smaller, more interconnected, more layered in terms of intellectually, much more intellectual resources available to us than there was 20 years ago. And I think that we can make that assumption that will grow exponentially as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's weird that even us visionaries, when it comes to it, we see way around the corner. Even we can't even imagine what it's going to be, because it's going to be even worse and better, bigger, and
more unexpected, I would say. Yes, there are aspects of the future that will surprise all of us. Hopefully there will be more beneficial surprises than adverse surprises. of course, we are living through a set of adverse surprises right now. Daniel, you mentioned the geopolitical situation in Ukraine, which is quite troubling. And then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, which I think derailed all of us to a certain extent. On the other hand, we've used this time well in terms of building our movement, building connections, both within the United States and internationally. And our friend Osunakachi Akuma Kalu, who is representing Tufts today, writes, "Let's get to universities and tell them about the USTP vision, putting science and technology in front of Africa's politics." So just as Zoltan's slogan was, and the USTP slogan is, putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of American politics. And I see, Daniel, you have the
Yeah, that's
t-shirt
exactly
there.
it's putting science on for African politics.
Yes. Now we
Absolutely.
can have it applied to African politics as well, thanks to the work of Osunakachi and his colleagues at Tufts. So now we are coming to our last 10 minutes of today's virtual Enlightenment Salon, and I would like to invite members of our panel to provide closing remarks. What would you like to say in terms of characterizing this panel, or is there anything else that any of you would like to mention in regard to Daniel's work and your hopes for the future of such work? Charlie, let's start with you.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say it's a pleasure meeting you here virtually. I think our visions align pretty much almost 100%. And I really look forward to helping you get the funding for this, and, you know, maybe collaborating on other projects in the future. I think this is this could be a really great start in doing bigger and better things to really get the word out there. So great meeting you today, and congratulations on your work. And I look forward to seeing what you got to come forward with.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel the same way.
Excellent. And now let us go to Zach Richardson.
Your documentary Rhyme and Reason. I'm a big fan of 90s hip hop, at least when I'm working out. I'm wondering if there was anything you specifically learned from that that could apply to, maybe we talked about this already, but that could apply to really making this film stand out. If there were any techniques, I just know it had a very high profit margin and it seemed to be extremely successful. Talk on that briefly, I guess.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, Rhyme and Reason was a great experience, and you know, we're going to have to get a certain amount of celebrities involved in this film, just because that's the coin of the realm when you go and sell it, you know. And you know, the good thing about Rhyme and Reason was that, you know, there was all the top hip hop, you know, artists of the day, you know, were in our movie. So when we went to go and take it to a distributor and say, are you interested in this? They were like, you know, 200 million records sold amongst all these people. Yes, we were very interested, you know. And I don't know, and like I was saying, each movie has its own landscape and its own thing, but there will certainly have to be a bit of, you know, stardust that we're going to have to sprinkle on AgeLess to make sure that it's attractive to you know, distributors. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yes, indeed. And I wonder what it would take to get to a world where scientists who do anti-aging research are themselves treated like celebrities. We get a bit of a taste of that at conferences like RADFest, where, of course, they are essentially given celebrity status. And it's wonderful to see. Mike Lazine suggests getting in touch with Steve Aoki and celebrities like him. Steve Aoki is known to be a supporter of radical life extension. Edward James Olmos has also done promotional videos for the SENS Research Foundation. So I think you do have some avenues to explore there, Daniel. But now let's go to Ben Ballweg for his closing remarks.
Maybe you've heard of Tim Maupin's full-length upcoming film, The Last Generation to Die. It seems like it might be coming out about the same time as AgeLess. I wonder how those two movies could kind of work in concert to further the USTP agenda.
Yeah, and then Joshua Oppenheimer was at I ran into him at the first Radfest because we were shooting it and he was shooting it, and he's an Academy Award winning documentary filmmaker. He seems to be focused on, I think, People's Unlimited, but there's the more the merrier. When we were making Rhyme and Reason, which was just referenced, there was a Def Jam Records, which was the biggest record company for hip hop at the time, met with us. We gave them our treatment, and we had like this meeting, and we walked out of it, and the director was like, "Oh, that was a great meeting," and I was like, "I don't know." The next day in the Hollywood Reporter, there was on the front page was Def Jam Records to make documentary film on hip hop, and the article word for word read like our treatment. They used all the same language that we used in our treatment, pitching our movie to describe the movie that this other company was going to make. So I've been in that situation where, two hip hop documentaries coming out at the same time, one by this big, powerful company, and we decided, like, we're filmmakers, and we released our movie, and they did about the same at the box office. It made about $2 million each, and Rolling Stone voted our film like one of the top 35 documentaries of all time, so the more people who make the more the better, because it expands the space. It will create general awareness about this topic. And so if somebody see that movie and likes it, hopefully they'll come see our movie. I think they're further along than we are. It will take more time for us to get out into the marketplace with ours. But, I think it's awesome,
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Daniel. And next, I would like to ask Art Ramon to provide some closing comments.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for coming. I'll be following your progress on the NFTs. I've done some NFTs myself, but haven't had very great success with them. So definitely I'll follow yours and see what your strategy is. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I did an NFT site 4 years ago, and I'm a little nervous about it, but I do think I lost money on mine 4 years ago, but I was too far ahead of the curve. And, I see it differently now, and I see it in a much more holistic way. And, I'm looking forward, and Art, any, if you want to help at all, just let me know, because it would be great to have some people on the team that have more experience in that space. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you to Art Ramon and Daniel. We have an interesting comment from Luis Arroyo in our chat. He says it might be that transhumanistic propaganda and art can make scientists as well as other workers look like the heroes or celebrities they are. And yes, there's a great role for that in terms of art, music, films, games. All of those are media that should be deployed for that purpose. And John H. wonders, do you know a fellow filmmaker by the name of Mark Scott Zicree, who was a writer for Star Trek and is...
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, he's funding his current project called Space Command.
I do know Mark Zicree, and I think he is super awesome. And I'm watching him make his project. And I wanted to say I had two other thoughts, about transhumanist celebrities. Like Elon Musk is basically a transhumanist celebrity, now. So I think the world is ready for, he's an engineer more than a scientist, but I do think that the world is ready for that, if the right conditions are, can be met. And I also wanted to say about technology in general, because it is scary to like not know the future. And, I think that's the whole idea behind the singularity, is that technology is going to change so fast. It reaches a point where we have no idea. Like, we can't see beyond that point. It's just like you can't see into a black hole. And that, I feel like technology, with every step in technology, it has promise and peril. When fire was created, we were able to cook meat and do all these, melt rocks and do all this amazing stuff, but some people used it to burn other people at the stake, or to set houses on fire, or, what have you. And I have a very strong belief that, that we will have peril, but that the net effect will be enormously beneficial.
Yes, and that is an excellent insight for us to conclude our conversation today. Thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us and for your work on films such as Immortality or Bust and AgeLess. We wish you all the best in developing AgeLess, in finding more scientists to interview, finding more celebrities to take part, because this should be a celebrity cause. It is, I think, the most important cause of our generation, certainly, and in many ways of all human history, because we will have all of future history to enjoy if it succeeds. So thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. These are the kinds of conversations we strive to have at our virtual Enlightenment salons every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Until next time, live long and prosper.